I taught myself how to live without needing anyone, not because I was strong, but because I got tired of discovering how easily people leave. That's the part I don't say out loud. You see confidence when I walk into a room. Decisions made fast, no hesitation, no second guessing. But what you're really looking at is someone who removed dependency from his vocabulary like it was a weakness that needed to be erased. And I got good at it. Too good. There's a kind of power in not needing anyone. No waiting, no explaining, no vulnerability, just movement, forward, always forward. But here's the part no one warns you about. When you train yourself not to need people, you don't just lose dependence, you lose access to warmth, to softness, to the kind of connection that doesn't ask for permission before it changes you. And I didn't notice it happening at first. It was gradual, quiet, efficient, like everything else in my life. Until one night, my place was silent. Not peaceful, silent. There's a difference. You feel it in your chest before you can explain it. The city outside was still alive. Headlights sliding across the ceiling. Distant noise bleeding through glass. But inside? Nothing moved. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, jacket still on, phone in my hand. Your name was there. Unread messages, hours old. And I remember thinking, don't open it. Because opening it meant feeling something, and feeling something meant losing control. So I didn't. I put the phone down like it weighed more than it should. Like it was holding something I wasn't ready to face. Tell me something. How many times have you pretended not to care, just to protect the version of yourself that doesn't break? Because I've built entire years on that instinct. That night, I told myself the same lie I always do. I don't need this. I'm fine without it. And for a moment, I believed it. But then, the silence stretched longer than usual. It didn't distract itself. It didn't soften. It just stayed. And something in me started pushing back. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet question I couldn't shut off. If you don't need anyone, why does this feel like loss? I didn't have an answer, so I stood up, walked across the room, poured a drink I didn't want, tried to reset, reclaim control. That's what I do. I manage states. I don't sit in them. But control has a limit, and I was getting dangerously close to it. Here's an uncomfortable truth I had to face that night. The version of me that needs no one is also the version no one truly knows. Think about that. You can be admired, respected, even desired, and still be completely untouched as a person. That's the trade. And I made it willingly. Because needing someone means giving them access to parts of you you've spent years trying to organize, protect, hide. And I don't lose control. That's been my rule. But you are different. Not because you tried to break me, but because you didn't. You just stood there. Consistent, patient, real, in a way that didn't demand anything, yet somehow made everything feel exposed. And that's what scared me. Not losing you, but needing you. There's a difference, and it's a dangerous one. Because the moment you admit you need someone, you give them the power to affect you in ways you can't predict. And I've seen what happens when that power is mishandled. I've lived it. So I built something unbreakable, or at least, I thought I did. But sitting in that room, staring at a message I refused to open, I realized something I wasn't prepared for. Strength can become a prison when it stops you from reaching for the one thing you actually want, and I wanted to reach for you. I just didn't know how without dismantling everything I built, so I stayed still, and you stayed silent, and somewhere in that space between us, something started changing. I didn't understand it yet, didn't even fully admit it, but I felt it. And once you feel something like that, you can't unfeel it. The problem is, I still haven't figured out whether that feeling is something I should follow, or something that's about to cost me everything. I don't celebrate wins anymore. I catalog them. That's the difference no one notices. You'd think success feels loud, champagne, noise, people around you. But mine? It's quiet, surgical, controlled. A deal closes, numbers rise, another door opens. And I move on before the feeling has a chance to settle, because if it settles, I have to sit with it. And if I sit with it, I might realize it doesn't actually fill anything. That's the part I don't show you. There was a night, not long after everything started compounding. I walked into my place past midnight. City lights stretched across the glass like something out of a movie. Everything looked exactly how I imagined it would. Years ago. Clean, expensive, untouchable. I dropped my keys on the table. The sound echoed longer than it should have. No music, no voices, just that faint hum of electricity and space. Too much space. I remember standing there, not moving, just taking it in, and this thought slipped in, uninvited, unwanted. This is it. Not excitement, not pride, just recognition. Tell me something. Have you ever chased something for so long that when you finally got it, you didn't know how to feel anymore? Because I stood there, in everything I built, and felt absolutely nothing I couldn't control, and that should have been the victory, but it wasn't. So I did what I always do. I reached for distraction, poured a drink I didn't need, checked messages I didn't care about, opened conversations just to keep movement alive. Because movement feels like purpose, even when it's empty. And then I saw your name again. It wasn't even the message this time, just your name. And somehow, that hit harder than everything else in that room. You ever notice how one person can carry more weight than an entire life you've built? It didn't make sense to me. I had leverage, options, control. Everything was on my terms, except that, and I didn't like that. So I told myself the same thing again. Stay disciplined. Stay detached. Don't lean into it. Because leaning in means risk, and I don't gamble with things I can't calculate. But here's the uncomfortable truth I had to face. You can optimize your life so well that you accidentally remove the only things that make it worth living. Efficiency becomes isolation. Control becomes distance. And distance kills things quietly, not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly enough that you can pretend it's intentional. I started noticing patterns after that. Conversations felt surface level. People were around me, but never with me. Even when I laughed, it felt like something I chose to do, not something that happened naturally. That's when it hit me. I wasn't experiencing my life anymore. I was managing it. Every emotion filtered, every reaction measured, every connection kept at a safe, controlled distance, including you, especially you, because you didn't respond to control. You responded to presence. And presence is something I haven't practiced in a long time. There was another night, later than usual. I was sitting in the living room, lights off again, city dimmer this time, phone in my hand, thumb hovering, not over your messages, over your name. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to ignore it, I was trying to understand it. Why does this feel different? Not stronger, not louder, just real in a way I couldn't edit. And that scared me more than anything I've ever built. Because I realized something I wasn't ready to admit. Power doesn't protect you from loneliness. It just makes sure no one sees it. Read that again. I could have anyone, but I couldn't have you the way I wanted. Because the version of me you needed was the one I stopped allowing to exist. So now, I'm standing here with everything aligned, everything structured, everything exactly how it should be. And there's this quiet, persistent feeling that something essential is missing. Not loud enough to disrupt me, but not silent enough to ignore. And I keep wondering, if I let go of control, just for a second, if I actually step into something real with you, what does that cost me? Because I've spent years building a life that doesn't break, and I don't know if I'm ready to find out what happens when it finally does. It didn't break the way I expected. No crash, no explosion, no dramatic fall. It unraveled, quietly. That's what makes it dangerous, because you don't realize you're losing control. You just notice something inside you isn't responding the way it used to. That night, it was past 2 a.m., the kind of hour where even the city feels tired of pretending. My place was dim, not dark, just enough light leaking in through the windows to remind me I wasn't asleep. The air felt still, heavy, like the room was holding its breath. I was sitting on the floor, not the couch, not the bed, the floor, back against the wall, legs stretched out, tie loosened, shirt half unbuttoned, like I had stopped mid-transition and forgot to finish becoming whoever I was supposed to be. And the silence. It wasn't empty this time. It was loud. Not in sound. In memory. You ever have a moment where your mind stops obeying you? Where every distraction you usually rely on just fails? Because that's what happened. I didn't reach for my phone. Didn't turn on music. Didn't try to escape. And that was my first mistake. Because the moment I stayed still, everything I had been managing started surfacing. Your voice. Unfiltered. Not what you said, but how you said it. That calm way you had of seeing through me without forcing anything out. And suddenly, I wasn't in that room anymore. I was back in that conversation. You sitting across from me, not impressed, not intimidated, just present. You asked me something simple. Why do you always pull back when things start to feel real? I remember smiling, controlled, measured, deflecting like I always do. But you didn't move on. You just watched me. And for a second, just a second, I felt exposed in a way I couldn't dominate my way out of. That moment came back to me that night like it was happening again. And I couldn't escape it, because now, I knew the answer. I just didn't say it back then. Here's the uncomfortable truth I had to face, sitting there on that floor. I don't pull away because I don't care. I pull away because I care too much, and I don't trust what that makes me. Let that sit for a second, because that realization didn't feel like clarity. It felt like weakness, and I don't do weakness. Or at least, I didn't. But that night, something shifted. Not outwardly. If you saw me, you'd still think I was composed, still in control. But internally, I was losing ground. There's a version of me that's always 2 steps ahead, anticipates everything, controls outcomes, never gets caught off guard. That version had nothing to say, and that scared me more than anything else. Tell me this. What do you do when the version of you that's always in control stops knowing what to do? Because I didn't have a strategy for this. No framework, no logic. Just this raw, unfiltered awareness that I might have been wrong about something fundamental, about myself, about you, about what actually matters. And once that doubt enters, you can't just shut it off. So I sat there longer than I should have. Minutes felt stretched. Time wasn't moving the way it normally does when I'm distracted. And then I reached for my phone. Not out of habit, out of something else, something unfamiliar. My hand hesitated before unlocking it. Not because I didn't know what I'd see, but because I knew exactly what I'd feel, and I wasn't sure I could control it. That's the part I never admit. I'm not afraid of losing people. I'm afraid of what losing them does to me. Because if it shakes me, if it gets past everything I've built, then what does that say about all this control I've been protecting? About who I am without it? I opened the screen. Your message was still there. Simple, direct, nothing dramatic, but it carried weight, not because of the words, but because of what I hadn't given back. Consistency, presence, truth. Things I expect from others, but avoid giving when it costs me control. And in that moment, sitting there, staring at something so simple, I realized something that didn't sit well with me at all. You weren't asking for more, you were asking for real. And I didn't know if I knew how to give that, without breaking the version of myself I've spent years becoming. So I just sat there, phone in my hand, thoughts moving faster than I could organize. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have an answer. Not a calculated one, not a controlled one, just silence. And a question I couldn't shake. If I respond the way I feel right now, if I drop the control, the distance, the structure, what version of me shows up? Because I don't think I've ever met him, and I'm not sure what he's capable of. I used to call it discipline, distance, control, restraint. It sounded cleaner that way, but if I'm being honest with you, it was never discipline. It was fear. Trained, refined, and disguised so well, even I started respecting it. That's the dangerous part. Because when fear looks like strength, you stop questioning it. You start building your entire identity around it. And I did. I remember a night, different from the others. Not quiet this time. There were people, voices, music low in the background, a private gathering, controlled environment, the kind where everyone's watching, even when they pretend they're not. I was standing near the window, drink in hand, listening without really listening. And then you walked in. No announcement, no shift in the room. But something in me tightened. Not panic, not excitement, recognition. You didn't look at me immediately. You were talking to someone else, calm, present, completely unaware of the effect you were having, and I remember thinking, stay where you are. Don't move toward it. Don't engage it. Because the moment I do, something shifts, and I don't shift. I make things shift. That's always been the rule. But you didn't play by that. You never chased, never tried to earn my attention. And that bothered me more than I expected. So I did what I've always done. I created distance. Subtle at first. A delayed response. A shorter reply. Less eye contact. Less presence. Just enough to regain control. Or at least, that's what I told myself. But here's the uncomfortable truth I couldn't ignore. I wasn't pulling away to protect myself from you. I was pulling away to protect myself from what I felt around you. There's a difference, and it changes everything, because it means the threat wasn't external. It was internal. You ever realize you're the one sabotaging something real and still not stop yourself? Because I saw it happening. I saw the shift in your energy, not dramatic, not emotional, just quieter, more reserved, less available. And part of me registered it immediately. You're losing her. But another part of me, stronger, colder, said, good. That means you're back in control. That's the split I live with. One side that wants connection, and another that would rather lose it than feel exposed. And guess which one usually wins? Here's the pattern interrupt no one likes to admit. Sometimes we don't push people away because we're afraid they'll leave. We push them away because we want to prove that they will. Think about that. It's not protection, it's confirmation. A quiet, self-fulfilling outcome that keeps your worldview intact. And I've been running that pattern longer than I want to admit. You weren't the first to feel it, but you were the first to make me question it, because you didn't react the way others did. You didn't chase harder. You didn't demand explanations. You just adjusted, pulled your energy back without making noise about it, and that hit differently, because for the first time, I couldn't tell if I was winning or losing something I couldn't replace. There was a moment later that night. The room had thinned out, conversations fading, lights dimmer now, softer. You were near the exit, and I saw it, clear as anything. You were already halfway gone, not physically, emotionally, and I had a choice. Walk over, close the distance, say something real, or stay where I was, and let the pattern finish what it started. My body didn't move, but my mind, chaos. Go. No. Wait. If you go now, it's obvious. If you don't, it's over. And underneath all of that, why does this even matter this much? I hate questions I can't answer, and that one stayed. You left. No scene, no final glance, just gone. And I stood there, exactly where I started, holding control like it meant something. But it didn't feel like power, it felt like loss, delayed, and that's when it really hit me. Control doesn't protect connection, it erodes it, slowly, quietly, precisely, just like everything else I've mastered. So now I'm left with this, a version of myself that knows exactly why things fall apart, and still struggles to do anything different when it matters. And I keep thinking about that moment, that one decision, one step I didn't take, because something tells me, if I had moved, if I had said what I was actually thinking, everything after that might look very different, but I didn't. And now, I don't know if that moment is behind me, or if it's still waiting for me to finally choose something else. I thought losing you would feel dramatic, something loud, final, obvious. It didn't. It felt quiet, like something important slipped out of my life without asking for permission. And the worst part, everything else stayed exactly the same. Same routine, same calls, same results. People still shook my hand the same way, like I was someone who had it all figured out. But there was this gap, not visible, not explainable, just something missing in a way that didn't interrupt my life, but hollowed it out from the inside. That's the kind of loss no one prepares you for. There was a night. I remember it too clearly. Rain against the windows, slow and consistent, like time had decided to drag itself out. The lights were off again, not for effect. I just didn't see a reason to turn them on. I was sitting at the table this time, laptop open, work in front of me, unread. For the first time in a long time, I couldn't force focus. Every few seconds, my mind pulled me somewhere else. Not to you directly, but to the absence of you. And that's when it shifted. Because missing someone isn't always about memories. Sometimes, it's about noticing all the places they used to exist in your present. You ever experience that? Where nothing specific reminds you of them, but everything feels slightly off because they're not there anymore? That's where I was. And I didn't like it, so I did what I've always done. I tried to override it, opened more tabs, took more calls, stacked my time so tight there was no room for anything unnecessary. Because if I stay productive, I stay in control. Right? Wrong. Here's the uncomfortable truth I had to face. You can outwork loneliness, but you can't outgrow it. It waits, patient, quiet, until you slow down just enough for it to catch up. And that night, it caught me. I closed the laptop, didn't slam it, didn't hesitate, just closed it, and sat there. Rain still falling, room still dark. And for the first time since you left, I stopped trying to win. That's what this has always been for me. Winning, control the situation, control the narrative, control the outcome. But you were never something I could win. You were something I had to meet, and I didn't. That's on me. No excuses, no reframing, just truth. Tell me something. What's harder for you? Admitting you lost something important, or admitting you were the reason you lost it? Because I've built my entire life avoiding that second one, and now I'm sitting in it, fully aware, fully responsible, and still unsure what to do with it. That's the part no one talks about. Awareness doesn't fix you, it just removes your ability to lie to yourself. And I can't lie to myself about you anymore. You weren't asking for perfection. You weren't asking for constant attention. You were asking for presence, consistency, something real. And I gave you fragments, controlled doses, measured responses, just enough to keep you there, but never enough to let you feel safe. I see that now, too clearly. And there's a weight that comes with that kind of clarity, because it means this wasn't bad timing. It wasn't incompatibility. It was me. And I don't know what to do with that yet. That's the truth. I don't know if I'm supposed to reach out, or let it be, or accept that some things don't come back once you let them go too far. But there's something else. Something I haven't fully said out loud. Something that's been sitting under everything, because losing you didn't just show me what I'm missing. It showed me who I become without something real to anchor me. And I don't like that version. Not because he's weak, but because he's empty, functional, effective, respected, but empty. And that scares me more than losing you ever did. Because it means I can go right back to that life. Build more, achieve more, become more, and still feel less. So now I'm here, in this space I don't fully understand yet. Not chasing, not numb, just aware. Aware that something mattered. Aware that I mishandled it. Aware that I might not get another version of it again. And there's a question I can't shake. If I saw you again, not by accident, not by timing, but by choice, would I know how to show up differently? Or would I repeat the same pattern and lose you all over again in a completely new way? Because the answer to that question decides everything that comes next. And right now, I'm not sure which version of me would answer.